If your cooking skills were judged by a multiple choice test instead of a taste test, would the results truly reflect your abilities? Why does how we assess matter as much as what we assess? Good day, everyone. I am Roma C. Orhel, and today we were going to talk about the chapter 3 of our lesson, which is Appropriateness and Alignment of Assessment Methods to Learning Outcomes. But before we start our discussion, let us have first our learning outcomes that at the end of our lesson, the students should be able to first, identify various assessment methods and understand when each is appropriate based on the type of learning outcomes. Second, analyze learning outcomes and select assessment tools that best measure understanding, skills, and application. And lastly, number 3, explain how assessment can be used to support individual needs, improve teaching strategies, and design better instructional materials. Chapuis and Stevens 2009 delineated 5 standards of quality assessment to inform sound instructional decisions. First, clear purpose. This ensures that assessments are created and used with a specific goal. 2. Clear learning targets. Make certain that assessments measure what students are expected to know and be able to do and based on clearly defined learning objectives. 3. Sound assessment design. It guarantees that assessments are fair, reliable, and valid using appropriate methods to accurately measure student learning. 4. Effective communication of results. It involves providing clear and timely feedback to students, parents, and other stakeholders so they understand student progress and areas for development. And student involvement in the assessment process. It encourages students to take an active role in their own learning. Now, let us discuss about learning outcome. What is learning outcome? A learning outcome pertains to a particular level of knowledge, skills, and values that a student has acquired at the end of a unit or period of study as a result of his or her engagement in a set of appropriate and meaningful learning experience. The knowledge, skills, and values the student acquires after the lesson are called the learning outcomes. Anderson et al. 2005 listed 4 steps in a student outcomes assessment. First, create learning outcome statements. Second, design teaching or assessments to achieve these outcome statements. Number 3, implement teaching or assessment activities. 4, analyze data on individual and aggregate levels. And last, reassess the process. Now, let us proceed on taxonomy of learning domains. So learning outcomes are statements of performance expectations, like cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. These are the 3 broad domains of learning characterized by change in a learner's behavior. So first is cognitive domain. The cognitive domain involves the development of knowledge and intellectual skills. It answers the question, what do I want learners to know? Because as future educators, it is very important that at the end of our lesson, our student learns something from us because that's our job, to give them knowledge, skills, and values. So this domain will help us get that all. In cognitive domains, there are 6 levels. The first 3 are lower order, which is the remembering, understanding, and applying. While the next 3 levels promote higher order thinking, which is the analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Later, we will discuss about it. So let us talk about Bloom's revised taxonomy. So Bloom's revised taxonomy is not just for categorizing teaching activities, but also for ensuring that assessments accurately measure student mastery. Marzano and Kendall 2007 created a taxonomy with 3 systems and a knowledge domain. Their cognitive system has 4 levels: knowledge, comprehension, analysis, and knowledge utilization. Knowledge is like the remembering level in Bloom's taxonomy. Comprehension involves synthesis and organizing information, while analysis includes matching, classifying, and error analysis. Knowledge utilization involves decision-making and problem-solving. In a recent analysis of cognitive learning frameworks, Anderson et al. 2001 presented a detailed table outlining the different levels of cognitive processing. This framework serves as a valuable tool for educators and instructional designers aiming to enhance learning outcomes. The table categorizes cognitive learning into distinct levels, including remembering, understanding, and applying. Each level is associated with specific cognitive processes, action verbs, and sample learning competencies. So let us first discuss the level number 1, which is remembering. This foundational level involves retrieving relevant knowledge from long-term memory. Key processes include recognizing and recalling information, while action verbs such as define, describe, and list are commonly used. For example, recalling the definition of a noun in English class. So, nag-remember na po ang isang bata dyan kasi nire-recall niya kung ano ang definition ng noun. Second level is understanding. At this level, learners construct meaning from instructional messages. Cognitive processes involve interpreting, exemplifying, and summarizing information with action verbs like convert, distinguish, and explain. For example, explaining the plot of a novel studied in literature class. Next is applying. This level focuses on carrying out or using a procedure in a given situation. Processes include executing and implementing with action verbs such as apply, compute, and demonstrate. So, for example, using a mathematical formula to solve a problem in a physics assignment, na-apply niya yung natutunan niya, which is yung paano mag-solve, ano yung gagamiting formula. So those 3 levels are lower order levels. So those are remembering, understanding, and applying. Now let us proceed to the 3 levels, which is the higher order. So let us start with the analyzing. This level involves breaking materials into its constituent parts and determining how the parts related to one another and to an overall structure or purpose. These cognitive processes include differentiating, organizing, and attributing, with action verbs such as analyze, arrange, and compare. So for example, comparing the themes in 2 different poems in a poetry class. Next is evaluating. At this level, learners make judgment based on criteria and standards. Processes include executing, monitoring, and generating, with action verbs like appraise, compare, and judge. For example, critiquing the effectiveness of a persuasive essay written by a classmate. And lastly, creating. This highest level involves putting elements together to form a coherent or functional whole, recognizing elements into a new pattern or structure. Processes includes planning and producing, with action verbs such as classify, construct, and create. Example, designing a science experiment to test a hypothesis. Those are the 3 higher order level of cognitive domain. So, the last 3 are the analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So, we're done with cognitive domain. And now, let us proceed to the second domain, which is the psychomotor domain. The psychomotor domain focuses on physical and mechanical skills involving coordination of the brain and muscular activity. It answers the question, what actions do I want learners to be able to perform? So, from the word itself, psychomotor. Ibig sabihin po niyan, mayroon pong movement na nagagamit po ang mga muscles ng mga estudyante. As future educators, we must study and learn this lesson so that we can apply it to our teaching in the future. The psychomotor domain is also important because it focuses on the physical and mechanical skills of children. They should not only sit and listen in class, they should also have activities to do so that they can learn more and also test their coordination of the brain and muscular activity. So, this is how important psychomotor domain is. Dave, in 1970, identified 5 levels of behavior in the psychomotor domain. First, the imitation, manipulation, precision, articulation, and naturalization. While Simpson, 1972, laid down 7 progressive levels: perception, set, guided response, mechanism, complex overt, response, adaptation, and origination. While Harrow 1972 developed her own taxonomy with 6 categories organized according to degree of coordination: reflex movements, basic fundamental movement, perceptual, physical activities, skilled movements, and non-discursive communication. A new framework for understanding and developing psychomotor skills, essential for physical and mechanical activities, has been presented, combining the taxonomies of Simpson, Dave, and Harrow. It also has 4 levels. The first, observing. This initial level involves active mental attending of a physical event. Action verbs include describe, detect, and distinguish. Next, imitating. At this level, learners attempt to copy a physical behavior. Its action verbs include begin, display, and explain. Next level is practicing. This level involves trying a specific physical activity over and over. So, ibig sabihin po, pag-practice, paulit-ulit na ginagawa ang isang bagay hanggang sa ito ay iyong makasanayan na. Its action verbs include bend, calibrate, and construct. And last level, adapting. This highest level involves fine-tuning and making minor adjustments to perfect the physical activity. Action verbs include arrange, combine, and compose. Why does taxonomy of learning domains important? Diba napapaisip tayo, bakit merong taxonomy si Bloom's? Bakit meron pa si Harrow? Bakit meron pa si Dave? Diba? This framework helps ensure that learning experiences progress from basic recall to higher order thinking skills, fostering deeper understanding and improved learning outcomes. In essence, taxonomies of learning domains provide a valuable roadmap for us educators to design effective learning experiences that foster deep understanding, critical thinking, and the development of essential skills. But as what I've said earlier, there are 3 taxonomies of learning domains, and I already discussed the 2, which is the cognitive and the psychomotor domain. There's 1 left, and that would be discussed by my co-reporter in this chapter, Miss Althea Joy Verano. So, that's all for my part, and I hope you learned something from me. Thank you for listening and have a good day.
It is in Chapter 3, in which it is entitled Appropriate and Alignment of Assessment Methods to Learning Outcomes. As you can see from the slide, Table 3.3 presents the classification scheme for the affective domain developed by Krathwohl, Bloom, and Meisha in 1964. The affective domain includes factors such as student motivation, attitudes, appreciation, and values. So, Table 3.3, Taxonomy of Affective Domain, Krathwohl et al. 1964. So, before we dig deeper, let us define what is taxonomy. So, taxonomy means it is the science of naming, describing, and classifying organisms. Under this taxonomy, there are different levels, action verbs describing learning outcomes, and sample of learning competencies. One of the levels is receiving. So receiving, the action verbs describing learning outcomes is being aware or attending something in the environment. So they ask, chooses, describe, follows, gives, holds, and identifies. A sample learning competencies in a school setting or in a sports setting is they listen attentively to the volleyball introduction. So this is based from Krathwohl in his taxonomy. So another level is responding. When we say responding, it is showing some behaviors as a result of experience. So the student here answer, assist, comply, conform, discuss, greet, help, or even label. So in this, the student assists voluntarily in setting up the volleyball nets. So this is the learning outcome competency. So another is valuing. When we say valuing, showing some definite involvement, commitment. So in this, the student is able to describe, differentiate, explain, follow, form, or initiate. So in this, the student is able to attend optional volleyball matches. So what they have learned, they are able to apply it in real life situations. So when we talk about organizing, it is integrating a new value into one's general set of values, giving it some ranking among one's general priorities. So in this, the student is able to adhere, alter, arrange, combine, compare, complete, defend. And learning competency in this is the student is able to arrange his or her own volleyball practice. Now let's move on to internalizing values. In internalizing values, characterization by a value or a value complex acting consistently with a new value. For example, the student is able to act, discriminate, display, influence, listen, or modify. So she or he can internalize his or her own values. For example, still in a sports setting, the student is able to join intramurals to play volleyball twice a week. On to the types of assessment methods. So when we say assessment methods can be categorized according to the nature characteristics of each method. According to Macmillan of 2007, identified four categories which are selected response, constructed response, teacher observation, and student self-assessment. These are similar to carpenter tools, and you need to choose which is applicable for a given task. Students chooses answers from a provided set of options, making the process objective and efficient. There is typically one correct or best answer. So in this, in selective response format, so in this, the assessment is objective, in which the teacher are giving a set of questions to be answered. So the teacher provides answer sheets so the students can choose the best answers. And in selective response format, there are several types like multiple choice, true or false, matching, or fill in the blanks. There is a constructive response format. This requires students to create their own answers to questions, problems, or tasks rather than selecting from a given set of options. So basically, this is the opposite of selective response format, in which this is subjective while selected response format is objective. Some examples of this are essay assessment, oral questioning, teacher observations, constructive response format. There are also categories such as brief constructed response. So in brief constructed response, items are assessment tools that require students to generate short, concise answers rather than selecting predefined options. These items between recall and few sentences. So some examples of these are: they focus on questions, is an assessment, versatile applications that a student can perform. Performance task assessment. So this is the opposite of brief constructed response. So in this, students perform task instead of selecting answers. So this require more extensive responses than brief constructed items, because this is an authentic alternative assessment that demonstrates skills through activities. They use scoring rubrics or analytic or holistic. This offers real-life world application of knowledge, can be a product-based reports, projects, or skill-oriented such as speech or demonstrations. So in this, the student benefit integrates assessment with instruction. This focuses on higher order of thinking, increases motivation, and improves validity. So in short, this can also help students to experience or apply in the real world application. Another is essay assessment. I know everyone is really familiar to this because this is often used in in giving assessments to students to be able to know their depths or their understanding. So in essay assessment, this allows students to demonstrate their reasoning and understanding through writing. This can be restricted response requiring brief, focused answers or extended response, allowing for more in-depth exploration while easy to create. They demand careful evaluation by teachers. This is also a subjective response because students have different opinions regarding on certain topics. So this is also a great way to be able to assess students and their reasoning and understanding ability. Reasoning. This is often used in discussions. So, our reasoning method of checking students' understanding through spoken questions. Formal approaches includes interview, conferences, effective questioning engages students, promotes reasoning, builds confidence, and enhances comprehension. Responses are typically evaluated using scoring system or rating scale. So, we often use oral questioning while discussing certain topics. So when a teacher is presenting idea, sometimes she will ask questions if the students have 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 stock knowledges on certain topics or if they understood the topic she is discussing. So this is also a great way to be able to assess the students' knowledge or idea on certain topics. So this also can reflect if the teacher have this also can benefit the teacher because this will be a feedback or a reflection of her teaching style. Situations, often paired with oral questions, provide continuous monitoring of students' understanding. By observing student responses, participation, and body language during activities, the teacher can gauge learning in real time. So in teacher observation, they engage they in the students' engagement and learning process helps teachers assess comprehensions and problem-solving skills. A teacher might observe a student struggling to solve math problems. So, to be able to assess this learner, he or she must know his or her weaknesses and to be able to identify what is his or her learning style and to be able to apply that so the student can solve easily explaining concepts clearly and helping peers demonstrate strong comprehensions so the student can be able to catch up through the lessons. This is a vital component of effective education, enabling learners to evaluate their progress, skills, and academic performance. This process involves reflecting on one's work, understanding personal strengths and weaknesses, and measuring achievements against set learning goals. Regular self-assessment leads to numerous benefits, including improved academic performance, increased motivation, and enhanced self-awareness, and the development of critical thinking tools. So, student self-assessment is a vital tool to be able to assess what are your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to learning. This can also be a tool to be able to improve that weaknesses and to be able to strengthen that strengths. In an outcome-based education, it's essential to align teaching and assessment with learning outcomes. This alignment, termed constructive alignment, involves matching teachers' learning activities, or TLAS, and assessment tasks, or AS, with verbs used in intended learning outcomes, or ILOS. Teachers includes consider the level of thinking they aim to measure and use to perform verbs in ILOS to guide their choice of assessment tools. Tools like Anderson and Krathwohl's taxonomy table help align learning outcomes and instruction. So now let's move on to learning target. A learning target is defined as a description of performance that includes what learners should know and to be able to be able to do. It contains a criteria used to judge students' performance. It is derived from the national and local standard. So a learning target is different from objective. A learning target is 2007 prefer a scorecard as a guide on how well a particular assessment method measures each level of learning. Table 3.4 depicts the relative strength of each assessment method in measuring different learning targets. Four of the five types of learning targets were identified categories learning by Chapius and Stigens 2009. So as you can see in the back, the corresponding the corresponding type of learning there has a corresponding score. So 5 being the best and 1 being the lowest. So please differ from the table above. And that's all for my report. Thank you for listening.
So, knowledge and simple understanding, it refers to the ability of how the student grasps essential content and procedure which fall under the lower order thinking skills in Bloom's revised taxonomy, specifically remembering, understanding, and applying. So, para ma-measure ang skills effectivity, selected response format like multiple choices and constructed response short answers are ideal because they cover a wide range of topics in a short time and are easy to check. Ang pencil and paper test would work well for evaluating facts, concepts, and procedures. Well, essays, on the other hand, allow students to express original ideas and show how they organize or connect information, making them useful for assessing writing and deeper comprehension. Oral questioning can also check for understanding, but it's less efficient and usually used informally during class discussion to give quick feedback and monitor progress. So, for deep understanding and reasoning, reasoning is all about how students use their knowledge in critical and creative ways. So, hindi lang basta memorize, kundi kaya nilang mag-analyze, mag-evaluate, at mag-synthesize ng ideas. Sa Bloom's taxonomy, ito na yung higher order thinking skills. So, para ma-assist ang ganitong lalim ng pag-isip, essays ang pinaka-effective kasi dito makikita kung paano mag-isip ang isang estudyante. Halimbawa, kapag pinapakumpara sila ng dalawang topics or paliwanag ang pros and cons ng isang argument. Dito rin madaling makita kung may error sa content, writing, or reasoning. Pwede rin ang oral questioning pero medyo time-consuming siya. And the performance tasks are also powerful like sa paggawa ng action research, makikita ng teacher kung paano pumili ng sampling method or mag-collect ng data at gumamit ng statistic at mag-interpret ng results ang isang estudyante. So, kahit ang selected response and short answers ay pwede rin. Pero kailangan mas maingat sa pagbuo ng tanong para hindi lang recall ang test. Para ma-challenge ang students, pwedeng gumamit ng interpretative exercise, mga objective items na nakabase sa story passages, tables, or chats para ma-measure ang deeper understanding nila. So, performance assessment is the best way to check kung may tunay na skills sa isang estudyante. So, kapag ginamit ito sa mga real-life at meaningful tasks, magiging authentic assessment ito. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang basta-basta gawa-gawa, kundi may silbi sa totoong buhay. So, bagay ito sa mga activities na walang fixed na sagot, kung saan kailangan mag-isip, mag-organize ng information, mag-analyze at magpakita ng creativity. Ginagamit ito sa mga oral presentations like physical performances o paggawa ng products like posters, videos, or research outputs. It shows how students apply what they've known in practical and original ways. So, ang mga product kaya ng tula, kwento, research, drawing, o video ay best i-assess gamit ang performance task because they clearly show how deeply students understand and apply concepts and skills. Hindi lang ito basta gawa, students need to apply, analyze, evaluate, and integrate what they've learned. Kaya nasasakop nito ang lahat ng levels sa cognitive domain. Sa basic knowledge level, tests can be used to check kung alam nila ang parts or elements ng product. Kung written naman ang output, essays are also a good match, pero pinaka-effective pa rin ang performance assessment dahil gamit ang rubrics, teachers can measure the quality of each part of product. So, observation helps in checking the process habang ginagawa ito. So, sa formative assessment naman, self-assessment and peer evaluation allow students to reflect and give meaningful feedback to themselves and others. It's a complete way to assess both the product and the learning journey. Student effect like their attitude, interest, and values. Hindi madaling i-measure gamit lang ng multiple choice or short answer test. Mas effective ang self-assessment kung saan students reflect on themselves using rating scales or affective inventories. According to Stigens and Pufam 2019, may dalawang importanteng affective traits na lumalakas kapag formative assessment ang ginagamit. Academic efficacy, yung belief ng student na kaya niyang mag-succeed, and the eagerness to learn. Bukod dito, observation is also good para makita ang behaviors ng students habang nag-aaral, like honesty, personal discipline, and overall wellness. Through these methods, teachers can assess not just what students know, but also how they grow personally and emotionally. Next is oral questioning. So, sa oral questioning, it is also helpful in assessing affective traits like attitude, interest, and values. Lalo na kung honest ang student sa pag-express ng feelings niya. It gives the teachers a chance to hear insights na hindi usually lumalabas sa written test. Performance assessment can also be used to assess affect kasi habang ginagawa ng students ang task, pwedeng ma-observe ng teacher kung paano siya mag-behave, mag-react, or makipag-interact. Pero sabi ni Macmillan sa 2007, minsan hindi systematic ang observation. Ibig sabihin walang fixed na structure or consistency. So, teachers need to be careful and fair sa pag-interpret ng behavior. Dapat walang bias and based lang sa actual actions, not assumptions para ma-assess ng tama ang effect ng student. The K-12 education curriculum promotes a balanced approach to assessment by using both traditional methods like written tests and authentic techniques like performance tasks and portfolios. So, para makuha ang valid at reliable na ebidensya ng student learning sa table 3.5 or makikita sa ang guide para sa grade 1 learning outcomes kung saan ginagamit ang test at oral participation para i-measure ang lower order thinking skills tulad ng remembering and understanding. Pero hindi lang ito limitado sa grade 1. Pwede mo rin gamitin ang table as a template para gumawa ng assessment matrix sa kahit anong subject or grade level. Ang mahalaga, kailangan mong i-match ng maayos ang learning competencies sa tamang assessment tools para masiguro na aligned ang evaluation sa intended outcomes. So, this is the example table for the 3.6. As for the tertiary level, CHED underscores the importance of preparing a learning plan as a tool to check the match between the learning outcomes, content, and methodology. Table 3.6 is an excerpt from a sample learning plan in mathematics. Teachers need to understand that using a cookie-cutter approach in assessment, meaning one-size-fits-all, won't work effectively. Hindi lahat ng learning outcomes ay kayang i-measure gamit lang ng isang method. Each student learns differently, and each subject or skill requires a different way of checking understanding. Kaya mas advisable ang combination ng direct assessment like test, performance tasks, or projects, and indirect assessments like self-assessment, reflections, or peer feedback. This mix allows teachers to gather more complete and meaningful evidence of students' learning, making the evaluation process fairer and more accurate. Bago pumili ng assessment method, kailangan munang tukuyin ng teacher kung ano talaga ang purpose nito. Pang-replacement ba, pang-feedback, pang-diagnose ng learning gaps, pang-intervention, o pang-grades. Kapag malinaw na ang layunin, dapat tugma ang assessment sa klase ng task, simple o complex, sa level ng thinking na kailangan mula sa basic recall hanggang analysis at creation. At sa context kung saan ito gagamitin, face-to-face ba, online, o group settings. Dapat din itong itanong kung anong klaseng ebidensya ng learning ang kailangan i-gather. Kailangan bang ipakita ng student ang reasoning, creativity, problem solving, o sapat na ba ang memorization? Yung format ng assessment, written, oral, o performance-based, dapat akma sa learning goals at kaya gawin sa available time. Mahalaga ring i-check kung may sapat na resources at systems para maayos itong makandak. Sa huli, kailangang malinaw kung paano i-interpret ang results. Gagamit ba ng rubrics, standardized criteria, o teacher judgment para sigurong fair, accurate, and meaningful ang buong proseso. And that concludes Chapter 3 discussion about the appropriateness and alignment of assessment method to learning outcomes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if you don't have, keep safe, and thank you for listening.